2 hours ago, the numbers finally became impossible to ignore. The United States Inflation Reduction Act, Washington's most aggressive industrial policy in a generation, just triggered a financial reckoning inside Canada's treasury that nobody in Ottawa wanted to talk about publicly. $30 billion. That is how much Canada has committed to keep Volkswagen and Stellantis from crossing the border and planting their battery gigafactories in Michigan, Ohio, and Georgia instead. $30 billion in direct subsidies, production incentives, and infrastructure guarantees, all because Washington wrote a law so generous to American-based manufacturers that Canada had no choice but to match it or watch its entire automotive future drive south overnight. This is not a trade war fought with tariffs. This is a war fought with checkbooks. And right now, Canada is spending faster than anyone imagined. But before we break down every layer of what is happening, if you want to stay ahead of stories that actually move economies, hit that subscribe button and drop a like. Now let us talk about what the IRA actually did to Canada, because this story starts in Washington, not Ottawa. The Inflation Reduction Act passed with one goal nobody in the White House wanted to say out loud: pull advanced manufacturing out of allied nations and back onto American soil. The battery production credits inside that law are extraordinary. American-based manufacturers receive up to $45 per kilowatt-hour of battery capacity produced domestically. For a single gigafactory at full capacity, that translates to billions in annual federal support. No Canadian program could compete with those numbers on their own terms. Volkswagen looked at St. Thomas, Ontario. They looked at the IRA credits available in South Carolina. The math was brutal. Canada either matched the subsidy or lost the factory. Stellantis ran the same calculation for Windsor. Same result. Ottawa faced a choice that was not really a choice at all. Spend $30 billion or surrender the next generation of North American automotive manufacturing to American states already writing blank checks. And this is where Washington miscalculated, because the assumption inside the IRA was that Canada would absorb the loss quietly and accept a diminished position in the continental supply chain. That assumption did not account for Mark Carney. 45 minutes after documents confirming the full $30 billion commitment leaked to financial press on both sides of the border, Carney did not call a damage control briefing. He called a press conference framed not as a defense, but as a declaration. He walked to the podium with a folder that looked less like talking points and more like a blueprint. He opened with one line that stopped analysts mid-sentence on trading floors from Toronto to Frankfurt. Canada is not subsidizing weakness. Canada is buying the future. Then he laid out 4 countermoves that revealed this commitment was never panic. It was the visible surface of a strategy running quietly for over a year. First, Canada is establishing a sovereign battery corridor, a federally protected manufacturing zone spanning southwestern Ontario from Windsor to St. Thomas, with guaranteed grid infrastructure, streamlined permitting, and a 10-year fiscal stability agreement no American state can legally replicate. Volkswagen and Stellantis are not getting a subsidy. They are getting a guaranteed operating environment that eliminates regulatory risk for a decade. Second, Canada is immediately redirecting 30% of its critical mineral export agreements toward battery supply chain partners inside the corridor. Lithium, cobalt, nickel, currently exported raw, will now be refined and delivered to Canadian gigafactories first. The downstream value capture stays inside Canadian borders. Third, Carney announced an emergency skills partnership with 12 Canadian universities to produce 20,000 battery technology specialists within 5 years. The program is already funded. Washington's gigafactories can build the buildings. Canada will have the engineers. Fourth, and this is the move that made Washington go completely silent, Canada filed a formal WTO challenge to specific IRA battery credit provisions, arguing they constitute illegal discrimination against allied nation manufacturers. Legal experts from 3 countries confirmed within hours the case has genuine merit. If successful, it dismantles the most aggressive piece of American industrial protectionism in decades. The White House did not respond with strength. A spokesperson called Canada's challenge unhelpful and urged collaborative engagement. That is not the language of a secure side. That is the language of a side that suddenly realizes its most sophisticated ally just found the structural weakness in its signature legislation. Now here is the economic reality Washington's architects did not fully model. Canada controls the raw materials, without which no battery gets built anywhere on this continent. Canada holds the second-largest confirmed reserves of critical minerals essential for EV production. 60% of the cobalt flowing into North American battery supply chains originates in Canadian mining operations. The IRA created incentives to build on American soil. It did not create the minerals those factories need. Carney understands this asymmetry better than anyone. The American business community saw the exposure immediately. The Alliance for Automotive Innovation warned that Canadian mineral access is non-negotiable for any realistic EV production target. Goldman Sachs projected that if the WTO challenge succeeds, American EV manufacturers face a 2 to 3 year disruption worth $80 billion in deferred production value. These are American institutions telling their own government that the IRA created a vulnerability it cannot outspend its way out of. Internationally, Canada is not playing this alone. The European Union Trade Commissioner expressed support for Canada's WTO filing. Japan's Ministry of Economy released a statement calling for allied coordination on battery supply chain policy. Germany's Automotive Industry Association called Canada's Sovereign Battery Corridor a model worth studying. Washington designed the IRA to pull investment toward America. Instead, it is pulling allied nations toward each other. So, where does this leave Washington? 3 paths, none leading where planned. Follow through on current policy, and watch allied nations coordinate a legal and commercial response that chips away at American battery supply chains for a decade. Quietly restructure the IRA's most discriminatory provisions, and hand Carney a public victory that strengthens his position in every future negotiation. Or escalate, more subsidies, more content requirements, and drive Canada further into a critical mineral partnership with Europe and Asia that permanently reduces American leverage. Every option costs more than the one before it. 2 hours ago, the $30 billion number looked like Canada bleeding under American economic pressure. 2 hours later, it looks like the activation cost of a strategy that turns Canada's resource position into permanent structural leverage over the entire North American battery economy. Trump's IRA was supposed to make America the center of the continent's industrial future. Mark Carney just filed the paperwork to make sure Canada controls the supply chain that future runs on. Washington wanted to win the battery war by outspending everyone. It is now realizing the country sitting on top of the minerals never needed to win a spending war. It just needed to wait for the right moment to remind everyone who actually holds the cards. That moment arrived 2 hours ago, and Carney was ready for it.